The NGX is back to its aggressive bull run after slowing down last week. The all-share index added 2,272 points to close trading on Monday at 104,674.67 from Friday's 102,481.55. Investors gained 1.244 trillion naira, and also value increased by 193.1% to 25.94 billion naira from last Friday's 8.85 billion naira. This might just be an indication that investors are flocking to the stock market with new money. Well, let's take a look at the figures, beginning with the all-share index. Now, this is the all-share index. We have a percentage change, which is 2.22%. Now, compared to what we had, last week, it was far less than this. That's on Thursday, rather. And then the all-share index closed at 104,674.67. Now, let's look at some other indices from the market yesterday. For market capitalization, the percentage change, and just like the all-share index, 2.22%, and then we have the capitalization at 57.28 trillion naira. Very quickly, let's look at the top gainers from the market yesterday. For the top gainers, we have Oando closing at 13 naira 80 kobo after gaining 9.96%. And Dangote Cement here closed at 763 naira after gaining 9.93%. And Dangote Cement started this particular year, January, with 319 naira. So imagine from 319 naira in January to yesterday, 29th of January, now it's 763 naira. That's a gain of 139% year to date. But of course, if we're looking at what happened yesterday, just 9.93%. For Triple G, 3 naira 11 kobo, and it's gained 9.89%. I'm sure you're seeing some of the figures or some of the assets that have been here for a while. Then for Beja, we have it at 17 naira 35 kobo. That was the closing price yesterday after gaining 9.81%. For Royal Exchange, 85 kobo after gaining 8.97%. Now let's take a look at the top losers from the market yesterday. For Dark Communications, 81 kobo after losing 10%. Ikeja Hotels, 6 naira 75 kobo after losing 10%. For Cadbury, 20 naira 70 kobo after losing 9.8%. For Niger Police Force Microfinance Bank, that's Niger Police Force Microfinance Bank, 1 naira 95 kobo after losing 8.88%. For Elalix, it closed at 3 naira 2 kobo after losing 8.48%. And now taking a look at the sectoral performance, where we look at what sectors did well. And then if you look at this, you see a particular trend. You see a lot of these are already in red. But industrial goods, of course, they're still big, right? Okay, so for the banking sector, we saw 1.05 depreciation right there. For insurance, we saw 0.92% drop. And for oil and gas, we saw minus 0.12 drop. Consumer goods, minus 0.25%. But for industrial goods, you have it right there, 6.65% increase. Look at this trend. That tells you, where the money is going, basically. Well, of course, that has been us talking about what happened at the market yesterday. And with inflation as high as 28%, it is only natural to see investors flock to the stock market to take advantage. However, it's important to know when to take profit, including when and where to take position in anticipation of market correction. We'll leave this here as we get ready for our first conversation on the show today. Stay with us. Glad to know you're still with us. The intended withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger from ECOWAS has the potential to significantly impact trade, mobility and commerce within the bloc, with both positive and negative consequences. The anticipated fallout will include disruption of supply chains, loss of market access, restrictions on movement of people and goods, decline in regional investment, among others. Well, joining me to unpack this from Antwerp, Belgium, I have Collins Mweke. He's a global affairs analyst. Thank you, Collins, for joining me today.
Thank you, Perpetua, for having me.
The pleasure is mine. Now, I'd like to get your initial thoughts on this development. What went through your mind when you heard this particular announcement?
Perpetua, you called it intended exit. I like that positive outlook because essentially what you've done is leaving the door ajar with the hope or expectation that, the three countries, Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali, will not eventually leave. So,
well, I said that because when you look at some of the rules guiding this exit, there is that 1 year period. Some of those things have not been fulfilled yet, and even ECOWAS, is saying that it hasn't gotten that information yet. So, that's why I put it there. But go ahead, I understand.
Yes, I love that upbeat posture, because what it means is that, somehow you believe that it may not eventually happen. I mean, in the course of the 1 year, that they might be able to persuade them back, to the bloc to remain. But you see, the military juntas were very, very resolute. And indeed, you are right. I mean, it's got to take a year from the moment you give your official notice to actually exit to the time that you actually exit itself. But it could well be that their resolute decision to leave is such that indeed when they said they are leaving immediately, that they mean it. And the question you ask yourself is, who is going to stop them? Is ECOWAS now going to force them to stay against their will? So, but that's a story for another day. The point here is this, Perpetua. Nobody is served good by this, intended exit. Not for the three countries, because they complained that ECOWAS has not lived up to expectation in terms of security, bettering the lot of the people, and so on and so forth. Now, the three countries that constitute the alliance of Sahel states that are now leaving, they're not going to be safer by leaving. Their economy is not going to be served better, notwithstanding the fact that, the powers that are actually popping them up to leave may have been telling them otherwise. Obviously, they are being deceived, to think that you are better off outside the bloc than inside the bloc. And for the bloc itself, ECOWAS, I mean, this is no walk in the park. This is a very, very serious blow. And one can only hope that from the way they approach this, that they are going to be able to contain the situation, to make them stay. That's the best case scenario. But, or when they leave, that the realigned, ECOWAS landscape will be such that it will still be managed to, enable them achieve their goal of economic integration.
All right, you alluded to some of the things that they talked about. They talked about ECOWAS not living up to its expectation and all of that. Let's talk about these expectations. What are these things that ECOWAS actually stands for, especially things that member states are supposed to benefit from?
First and foremost, ECOWAS's core business is regional economic integration. Now, part of that, of course, is the drive towards free trade. At the moment, to some extent, you have the free movement of people, the free movement of goods and services. So it is no theory. I mean, it's not perfect, but somehow it is there. Now, there are a lot of things that could have been done. The security of the region could have been better, because, I mean, there is no gainsaying the fact that, foreign direct investment that have been deterred from coming into the region to establish, production activities and all of that, that they stayed away because of concern with security. That's a major failing on the part of ECOWAS. But again, they have not only just failed. How come it is now that the three countries, committed, military takeover of power, that they suddenly woke up to the fact that ECOWAS is failing? I mean, you need to be part of the conversation to be able to improve the security, if indeed security is your major issue. Now, on what they have achieved, of course, imagine a situation or envision a situation where there is no free movement of goods and services within the region. Of course, each country will be on its own, and the economic situation would have been worse than what it is today, even though it is not, the situation today is not perfect. It could have only gotten better with the three remaining in the bloc.
All right, so from where you stand, do you think they are justified by these claims that they have made? I mean, is there a justification for wanting to leave based on some of the things that you've also alluded to?
to some extent, they have some very, very strong and cogent points. But I don't think that is the issue. The timing of making that point is questionable because they have not said anything new. I mean, everyone has always referred to ECOWAS as, a backing bulldog that never bites. When it comes to containing, the spate of insecurity, coup d'etat, and all of that. But you see, ECOWAS will tell you that they are constantly trying to, better their law. But one area that they are not doing very well is actually seeing security from a holistic perspective, whereby issues like, coup d'etat are actually prevented from happening. But they have failed woefully in, preventing those things. So there is an irony here. If ECOWAS was as efficient as, the three countries, the Sahel, countries, if they were as efficient as they wanted, they wouldn't have been able to come into power. So that is the irony.
Let me come in here. Let me come in here now. You seem to be, probably putting this on ECOWAS, but is it really ECOWAS? I mean, is it what ECOWAS is supposed to do? Is ECOWAS supposed to be the one to prevent these things from happening? How is ECOWAS supposed to actually do that? I mean, isn't it that these countries are actually not taking responsibility for their own actions and looking for something or anyone to blame?
Yes, to a very large extent, that is actually correct. They are scapegoating. The three countries are definitely scapegoating. But I'm talking about the missed opportunities that ECOWAS, has, seen happen over the past decades. I mean, ECOWAS, by next year, ECOWAS would have existed for 50 years. So it is abnormal, completely unacceptable that nations within the ECOWAS region could still be carrying out coup. And so the reasons that they give for carrying out a coup is the fact that, one of the reasons, of course, is the fact that there are also civilian coups taking place where elections are manipulated under the watch of ECOWAS. ECOWAS basically does nothing. So you see, you give them those reasons to justify the coup, and then when you intervene to restore constitutional order, things begin to happen the way it is. And so there is enough blame to go around perpetual. But the point is that no one is going to be served better by this intended exit. Not the three countries and not ECOWAS itself, because it brings about a distorted economic landscape for which, the ECOWAS citizens are not going to be, smiling to the bank.
Now, on the premise of your last comment, let's look at this now. Of the $702 billion GDP of ECOWAS, that's in 2023, these three countries account for about $58 billion, or let's say 8% of the total. Now, do you think these countries are on the verge of losing access to a market much larger than themselves?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, countries are grouping together, in regional blocs, economic constructions, and so on and so forth. Why do you even think that China, United States, Turkey, to a very large extent, Russia, they are all angling, for what they are going to get in Africa? It is because the more, you expand the bloc, the better for you. So as a matter of fact, yes, 8% isn't very much, but it is something. And then you are not, if you look beyond the figures, you are also talking about, citizens of those three countries working in different ECOWAS countries. Now, what are they going to do with them, and vice versa? So apart from the economic gain, there are also some soft, benefits that will exist along with the three countries. So, I mean, everyone stands to lose, even as insignificant as the contribution of these three countries are to ECOWAS in its totality.
Right. Now, to be clear, what do these countries actually stand to lose, beg your pardon, by exiting the regional bloc? And do you think, I know you've talked about the fact that they stand to lose a whole lot, but does it outweigh the benefit of being a part of ECOWAS?
their loss will, outsmart the gains. Now, to be honest with you, I am not really 100% sure what their gains are going to be. Now, like I alluded to earlier on, Perpetua, it could be that Russia predominantly is actually gingering them up because they have their eyes on the raw materials that is, in those three countries. And so in the end, Russia is going to leave them high and dry. But they may have gotten all sorts of promises in terms of, enhanced trade deals with them and so on and so forth, telling them that they are better off outside the bloc than within the bloc. But you see, they are definitely losing access to a broader regional market, supply chain going to be distorted. And come to think of it, you are just three countries and there are still 12 other countries, or there were 15. And so in the end, I don't believe that, they are going to be better off. Yes, there will be water, but ECOWAS itself will feel to some extent their exit, in terms of distorting the supply chain, the economic integration, which is their core business, is not helped when countries are exiting rather than actually entering the bloc, expanding it.
All right, let's take a look at the regional trade policy of ECOWAS. That's very important because that's the crux of this conversation. Let's look at the promise it holds for member states and how effective this has been so far.
Well, essentially, like I alluded to, the core business of ECOWAS is regional economic integration, okay? Now, gradually, but of course, painfully, slowly, that had started to happen. I carry an ECOWAS passport. You probably do, as well as a Nigerian. And so that gives you access to the entire West African region in terms of being able to travel, in terms of, doing business, living and working in those countries. Those are very major gains. Could it be better? Absolutely. Absolutely, in terms of, a more harmonized, tax regime covering the entire ECOWAS region, that has not happened yet, and a number of other things. So those are the, examples of few things that are going to be missing as a consequence of this breakup.
All right, let's look at the implications of leaving the bloc. I mean, what are the spelled out implications? Does it affect market access or even movement? What are the things that are stated out that will be affected once a member state decides to leave? And in this case, 3.
When one member state leaves, what it means is that you are waving goodbye to the rest of the 14. This time around, 3 are leaving, and so they are waving goodbye to the rest of the 12. What that means, number one, is market access is limited, maybe even cut off. Now, with good negotiations, just like we saw in Brexit out of the EU, they might, negotiate some special arrangement, but I don't foresee ECOWAS being soft with them. So loss of market access is number one. Number 2, free movement of goods and services and the freedom to travel, also in terms of tourism and all of that is a major issue. And then FDI, foreign direct investment. Now, risk analysis are not going to be telling them, investors that your best place to invest is the alliance of Sahel state. First and foremost, with the insecurity that will definitely heighten as a consequence of their exit. Money goes to where there is peace, except, what you are investing on is ammunition. But if you're talking of everyday trade, they want to see peace and stability in the economy that they are, investing in. That is also going to be a major problem for them.
All right, thank you so much. I mean, we can keep talking about this, and we're also looking at how it's going to impact businesses, individuals. I mean, when we talk about businesses, they're actually run by private institutions. They are run by people, while what the government does is to put the necessary, conditions in place to ensure that a smooth running of business. So yes, we know this will affect the individuals who are living in these countries. Thank you so much, Collins Nweke, for sharing your thoughts with us on Business Edge today.
Thank you for having me, Perpetua.
As Nigeria navigates the complexities of 2024, a new report from PricewaterhouseCoopers (PwC) illuminates 7 key trends that will shape the nation's economic trajectory. In its report titled Nigeria Economic Outlook, 7 Trends That Will Shape the Nigerian Economy in 2024, the firm offers a comprehensive analysis of the crucial factors impacting the country's financial landscape. Joining me for this is Bimbola Banjo, Partner and Finance Advisory Leader, PwC West Africa. Thank you, Bimbola, for joining me today. Bimbola, if you can hear me, thank you for joining me today.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right, good to know you can hear me. Now, let's look at the trends that will shape 2024, as you have postulated in your report. You mentioned a couple of things, and one of them being the fact that investors are going to adopt some, cautious optimism. Yes, that was what you said. So talk to us, how can this cautious optimism be improved, and what is the cause? If you can hear me, Bimbola Banjo, I'd like to have your thoughts on this. We're looking at the report, which centers on 7 trends that will shape Nigeria in 2024, and one of them being that investors are going to adopt cautious optimism, and also talking about the fact that even the Monetary Authority has a lot of work cut out for it that it's going to do in the year 2024. I'd like to get your thoughts on the first one, which is about cautious optimism that investors are beginning to express at this point in time. If you can hear me, I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Had quite a bit. We had a downgrade, downgrade.
Okay, I'd like you to probably start all over. I didn't get you. I didn't hear what you said when you started. Did you hear my question, or do I take it again?
No, I heard your question.
All right, go ahead.
But
then.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, great. Yeah. So I was saying that part of the cautious optimism is coming primarily from the fact that last year there was a FTSE downgrade, as well as a number of insecurity issues within the country, right? As you know, part of the drivers of our headline inflation are the rise as the devaluation of our currency, right? So the rocketing inflation is creating a lot of cause for a lot of skepticism in the Nigerian business. Of course, the FX illiquidity as well is something that has given a lot of investors a lot of concern. If I brought in my hard currency into the Nigerian economy, it's very important that I'm able to do business and repatriate my funds as I went due. As you know, we've had issues with certain industries. For example, the airline industry was very well publicized last year when a number of airlines decided to stop flying some routes and doing business in Nigeria on account of unrepatriated funds that was due to them. So some of these factors are the factors that have resulted in the low level of optimism in doing business in Nigeria. But of course, I think the government is taking a lot of steps to try and alleviate the concerns by the government, by the investors. There's a lot of work being done to steer the fiscal policies and the monetary policies in the right direction, to improve on some of the issues that hitherto have plagued the Nigerian economy. There are a number of reforms, business reforms. There are reforms in the energy sector. There are planned reforms in the banking sector. There are a lot of legislative amendments, things to do with allowing the states to take more ownership in the generation and distribution of their own power. There's more ownership by states to manage their own correctional facilities. And that's an important aspect as well, because since insecurity is on the front burner, the ability of states to be able to manage security in their states is quite critical. And having the ability to prosecute criminal cases and put offenders in state-developed correctional facilities would be a step in the right direction.
Right. You mentioned a lot of things. You talked about inflation, you talked about Forex, and we also talked about, insecurity and power generation and how that's also being, democratized and all of that. But let's look at Forex. We've seen the CBN, we've seen the Monetary Authority doing a whole lot to address the issues that we are having in that realm. But I don't know if we've started seeing results, or it will take a while before we start seeing impact, or is it that this is just one way to handle it? There are other things that must be done to address this Forex issue.
Yes, I mean, the Forex it's on the front burner, right? Because like I said earlier, the two key drivers of our headline inflation, which I think every Nigerian is feeling at the moment, are the price of basic food commodities and the devaluation of our currency, right? And of course, the devaluation of our currency just today, in the official market, the dollar is over 1,300 naira. That's very significant for a country that has a very high import bill. So it means that for all of the commodities that we depend on and rely on and we use for our day-to-day activity and living, there's going to be significant rise in price. But you see, the central bank is doing a lot in that direction. They've been able to collapse many of the divergent windows, right, to harmonize the access to foreign currency, even though that in some way has led to the acceleration of the devaluation of the currency. But I think the outlook is that with some of the closing of these windows, the scope for arbitrage is further shrunk. Because if you think about it, right, having multiple windows will result in an endless cycle of demand for foreign currency, only for the purposes of arbitrage. And right, so I think a lot of what the government is doing in that monetary policy space is very important, but as well as the fiscal side, because right now we budgeted about our target is about 1.7 billion barrels of oil a day. We're currently on 1.2. We expect that with all of the work that is being done to improve the production, improve on security, that our FX earnings from the sale of crude oil will significantly increase our FX inflows. As you know, Nigeria is a very oil-dependent economy at the moment, even though we're doing a lot of work to diversify. But at the moment, the more we can meet our OPEX quota, which, by the way, was cut, but the more we can do to meet that quota, the more the FX we have available to manage our FX liquidity.
All right, let's look at this now. While the latest CBN figures put inflation at 28.9%, many say it is way more than that. I don't know what you're saying about that. And some have even asked for a rebasing of the inflation basket. Well, be that as it may, the Monetary Authority already absolutely has its work cut for it, which is achieving price stability. Yet, we also see that this is not a job for the Monetary Authority alone. What are your recommendations in terms of finding the right framework and even instruments to curb this?
Yes. I mean, I think, inflation, the inflation rate that we're seeing here, right, is, like I said earlier, has to do with the key factors around basic food prices and dollar inflation. Of course, I can imagine where people will say that they expect the inflation to be a lot higher, because when you go to your basic store, some of the prices that you see there seem to be higher than the 28.9% that is being brandished. But you have to remember that it's a potpourri of different items. It's not just food. There are many other items that constitutes the inflation that we're talking about. So if you put everything and you put everything into the buckets, you see that the inflation rate is about right. But again, I mean, to be honest, I think there's so many things that are being done to manage the inflation. Things that the monetary policies of the central bank are very important in a time like this, because the less liquidity there is in the economy, the better. So what we're trying to do, what the central bank is trying to do with monetary policies, is to mop up all that excess liquidity, ensure that with things like the NPR rate moving up to about 18.9%, it means that the rate of borrowing goes up. What that means is that there isn't excess liquidity there in the market buying up things, right? So what we're trying to do here with the central bank's policy is ensure that there's tighter hold on the available liquidity in the market. So things like the OMO operations, issuing treasury bills, ensuring that standing deposit facility, the cap on that has been removed, just means that people can put money into instruments that sort of mop out the excess liquidity that is purchasing those few items, right? Now, in addition to that,
Okay.
in addition to that, I think one of the things that one of the issues that the government is facing is the fact that 60% of Nigeria's economy is in the informal sector. Now, having 60% in the informal sector makes it very difficult for you to control your inflation through monetary policies alone, right? Because you still have money outside of that circle, purchasing goods and services, right? So I think a lot of work has to be done by the government to bring all of that informal sector into the formal sector, so that we can actually measure how much cash is in circulation and control it accordingly.
All right, thank you, Bimbola Banjo, partner and finance advisory leader, PwC West Africa. I know there is a whole lot to say, but we just have to end it here. Thank you so much for your time on the show. All
right, thank you very much.
All right, many thanks for staying with us today on Business Edge. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also head to our website, www.newscentral.africa. You can download our mobile app on Play Store and App Store. Till next time, I am Perpetua Fason Repeater. Bye for now.